What's up, everyone? Welcome to the May 17th edition of FanDuel Tournament Plays presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And as a reminder, you get one free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at Prize Picks. Be sure to use the code Awesemo to receive a 100% first deposit bonus up to $100. We have a 10-game MLB slate tonight. And as usual, we're going to take a look at three of the top tournament stacks and three of the top tournament pitchers on FanDuel. One thing that I am going to try and do a better job of in these videos, typically I just talk about stacks or pitchers that are projected to be under-owned relative to their chances of being a top stack or a top pitcher. I'm going to try and do at least a little bit better job of factoring in their price as well, because realistically in tournaments, if you tell me a pitcher is slightly over-owned in terms of chances of success versus ownership, but you also tell me they're the cheapest pitcher on the slate, I'm still going to play them in a lot of lineups and just find ways to differentiate elsewhere. So I'm going to try and do a better job of factoring in price. I think that will be more helpful. But as usual, starting with the top three tournament stacks. Number three, the Toronto Blue Jays are in a difficult matchup tonight against Logan Gilbert. They're projected for about 5% ownership, 4% chance of being the top scoring stack, and about a 5% chance of being the top value stack. They have a 4.5 implied run total against Gilbert. He's been good this year, 3.33 xFIP, 27.5% strikeout percentage. He's one of the better pitching prospects in baseball, had plenty of success last year as well. So certainly not a spot where I'm looking at the Blue Jays and saying I'm confident in them, but they do have a lot of power in their lineup, and we know that when Toronto is hitting, they can really do it top to bottom, and they have a lot of power. So when things go well for Toronto, it can certainly result in tournament-winning scores pretty easily. So far this year, they've been about a league average offense with a 99 WRC+. But when you look through this lineup, there's no shortage of power with guys like Springer, Bichette, Guerrero, Hernandez, Gurriel, Matt Chapman has some power, Alejandro Kirk, if you need a cheaper option, is fine for a catcher, although I guess you don't need a catcher on FanDuel, so a little bit less important, but point remains that there's a lot of power in this lineup. Number two, the Atlanta Braves are taking on Adrian Hauser tonight in Milwaukee. The Braves have struck out a lot this year, and they've been a little underwhelming as an offense with a 95 WRC+, but they do have a 165 ISO. They could be getting Ronald Acuna back tonight, which would be a very nice bump for that lineup, and Hauser doesn't have good strikeout stuff. He's only struck out 18.7% of hitters this season. Typically, he relies on keeping the ball on the ground. And he does a good job of it. But when you give me a lineup that has Ronald Acuna, Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Marcelo Ozuna, Travis d'Arnaud, Ozzy Albies, and you tell me these guys are going to be allowed to put the ball in play, I love taking chances there and just hoping that they're able to get it in the air and do a lot of damage. They're projected for about 3% ownership, 3% chance of being the top value stack, 5% chance of being the top scoring stack. Number one, the Houston Astros taking on Nathan Eovaldi. Similar to the Toronto spot, this is a very difficult matchup for the Astros. Eovaldi has a 3.03 xFIP this year. He has struck out 25.8% of hitters, but Houston still has a 4.7 implied run total. They're projected for 4% aggregate ownership with a 7% chance of being the top stack and a 4% chance of being the top value stack. They've been the third most productive offense in baseball this year with a 116 WRC+. They have a 179 ISO. And this is just one of those spots that we talk about a lot that I like targeting in tournaments where the pitcher is good, the offense is good. As a result, people don't play the pitcher and they don't play the offense, even though a relatively high percentage of the time, you're either going to get a big game from the offense or a big game from the pitcher. You're not just going to constantly get 3-2 or 4-3 final scores. And so there is plenty of upside to attack here, despite the matchup. Now, looking at the top three pitchers, number three, on the opposite side of the Toronto matchup, Logan Gilbert, $10,100, projected for a 7% chance of being the top scoring pitcher, 1% ownership, 2% chance of being the top value. So not a very favorable price tag, but still a lot of upside here. As I mentioned before, Toronto has been relatively underwhelming as an offense this year. 99 WRC+, 22.8% strikeout percentage. Gilbert has a 27.5% strikeout percentage and 3.33 xFIP. He's certainly capable of getting it done if he's on top of his game tonight against the Blue Jays. Number two, Jameson Taillon, $9,200 in a favorable matchup against the Baltimore Orioles. Taillon's projected for an 8% chance of being the top scoring pitcher, 9% ownership, 3% chance of being the top value option at $9,200. So ownership coming in about where it should, but this is a good matchup against the Orioles. Ryan Mountcastle is on the injured list. Austin Hayes may or may not be back in the lineup tonight for the Orioles. So an even weaker lineup than usual for a team that has a 92 WRC+ and a 24.5% strikeout percentage so far this season. Taillon has only struck out 19.4% of hitters, but he does have a very respectable 3.65 xFIP. And number one, on the opposite side of the Houston Astros matchup, Nathan Eovaldi is $9,500. He has a 9% chance of being the top scoring pitcher, 5% projected ownership, 3% chance of being the top value pitcher. He has a 25.8% strikeout percentage this year, 3.03 xFIP. He throws a lot of pitches. He typically has a very long leash to work deep into games, which is nice on FanDuel since you do get the quality start bonus if he can go 6 innings and allow 3 or fewer earned runs. The only issue here is that he is facing an Astros team that has a 116 WRC plus and a 21.5% strikeout percentage so far this year. But as I mentioned with Houston, it's not always going to be 3-2 where neither side does very well. You're going to get plenty of games where Evaldi shuts them out for 7 innings and strikes out, 6 or 7. You're going to get plenty of games where the Astros light him up, targeting or playing both sides, getting to Evaldi in some lineups, getting to the Astros and others. Makes a lot of sense because you can capture those high upside outcomes at low ownership. So to recap, the top 3 tournament stacks: number 3, the Toronto Blue Jays; number 2, the Atlanta Braves; and number 1, the Houston Astros. And the top 3 tournament pitchers: number 3, Logan Gilbert; number 2, Jameson Taillon; and number 1, Nathan Evaldi.